Now we can talk a lot around the security of your servers, of your networks, making sure that things are regularly patched, that things are secure, that things are updated, that you are backing up, that you've got the right endpoint protection software across your network, that you're monitoring things, all of that. And that's all really well and good. But then there is the physical security component that also needs to be considered. Making sure that if you've got servers, if you've got other networking devices, somewhere inside of a room, inside of a cabinet, inside of a data center, wherever it may be, wherever your tech lives, your infrastructure tech lives, you need to keep that physically secure. Don't just have servers sitting on the floor that anybody can just potentially get access to. Don't have a beautiful rack set up with all of your gear racked in there, but then the rack is openable, right? There's no lock on it. Or the back of the rack is fully open. So the front is locked, but then you could sort of go to the back and it's open there. Or you can just pull the side panel down and anybody can just get in access that way. So this is a little bit of a snapshot around some recommendations on physical security for your infrastructure. What can you be putting in place to control that security a little bit better? The first thing that you need to do is to physically ensure that the servers are, of course, secured in a restricted comms cabinet, in a restricted access area, locked in a room or a data center of some kind. Don't just have the equipment laying there. Make sure that it is physically racked somewhere. Don't just put stuff on a table. Put it inside of a cabinet that is lockable. Now, whether that be with a key, whether that be with a fingerprint, whether that be with biometrics, whether that be remote access, where you can actually send a command to unlock the doors. Make sure that it's lockable, that it's not accessible from the front, the back, from the sides, unless you are a authorized person, unless you are, for example, a person that has restricted access. Don't allow anybody, staff, just to be able to get access to this equipment. And then once you've got the equipment in a rack that is secure, get it into a room, into a little cabinet, into a data center that is also secure. If you're going to put it inside of a room, of course, the standard things would be making sure that that room is set up correctly, that there's air conditioning, that there's fireproofing systems, there's all of the system stuff set up, maybe a raised floor to ensure that it is protected from elements, but then also that the room itself, access to that room is restricted and controlled. That the rooms themselves are only accessible by the right people, that they're accessible only via a pass, via biometrics, whatever it may be. You don't want the cleaners to just be able to go in there. Only authorized people should be able to go into the rooms because potentially somebody could come in. You've invested all this time, all this money, all this effort setting up your network correctly. And that is fantastic. And you've got the right monitoring in place, but then you've got somebody who can come in with a USB drive, somebody that comes in with a little Raspberry Pi with some malicious code on there. They plug it in to your rack and then things can go pear-shaped. And we've all seen it in the movies where somebody can come in, they just access a comms room, a server room, and then they just plug something in and then bam, they can bring things down or steal data or things like that. And that can be possible, but if you prevent that from actually being a thing because you're putting in good practices, that's preferred. So only authorized people should be able to access these rooms. Now, this doesn't mean that it's everybody in the IT department. Depending on the size of the tech team, if it's in a smaller, medium, or large business, a larger business may have very specific IT roles, right? You may have services people, you may have people that are more desktop support, people who are your engineers, your administrators, and then your management, your architects. You don't want to be granting access to absolutely everybody in your IT team. Only grant access to the people who are going to need access. If you want to get very, very specific, you may have racks set up, racks that are just with networking gear, right? That's where all of your networking gear sits. Your switches, your patch panels, your firewalls, your load balancers, they all sit in there. Then you've got racks that are full of your servers. Maybe all of your virtualization tech is sitting on these physical boxes. Then you've got a rack full of your storage, whatever it may be, right? You may actually have systems administrators that may only have access to the servers because you may not be responsible for managing networking devices. So you may not have access to those networking devices. In a larger business, it's pretty common to have it segregated where you only have maybe you can access a room, but then the rack itself, if it's a smart rack, for example, you won't be able to, with your pass or with a command, a network command, be able to open up racks that are not relevant to your level of responsibility. In a smaller, medium-sized business, well, you may be able to access everything. Really depends, but you only grant access controls to the people who need access. It may be good to use surveillance systems, installing CCTV cameras outside of the rooms, inside of the rooms, in the corridors, in the hallways, in the floor where the equipment is being kept, where you are not only preventing access to the rooms, but if unauthorized access should happen, you should be able to see from cameras somebody gaining access. With the secure passes as well, there should be some sort of a logging system behind the scenes that sort of maybe talks directly with a security system of some sort, where you can actually see what passes were used to access specific doors, to specific racks, so you can actually go back and verify and monitor should unauthorized access have happened. And then lastly, I recommend that you do a regular inventory, almost like a stock take of the gear that is in there. This is more just as a good practice, but also as a good housekeeping, where you get somebody in maybe once a year to just verify everything in there is working correctly. You're going to have admins going in and out of these rooms, accessing cabinets all the time, adding equipment, removing equipment, moving a network cable from this port to this port. All of this ideally needs to be tracked somewhere. You should be able to have some sort of an asset tracking system or network diagrams that are regularly being updated, making sure that the information is accurate. But then you may want to be able to have a regular check once a year, twice a year, where you get a team of people and making sure that all the equipment that should be in there is actually there, that all the equipment that is in there is actually cabled correctly. All the powers look right, all the Ethernets look right, that they're running to the right points, that everything is being labeled correctly, that everything looks well, that the room is cool enough, that the lighting is okay, that the fire systems are all working. All of this needs to be putting in place to ensure, just as a good practice, that things are working well. So there are a few tips now outside of this, not really specific around security, but good practices. But it's just ensuring that, as I mentioned, you've got proper fireproofing systems, temperature gauges, making sure that things are not getting too hot, moisture detections, and that you've got systems in place where the room itself is kept at the best peak physical condition possible.